Shabbat Shalom, my friends. This time in the Hebrew calendar is never easy for many of us. We have entered the month of Av, the second last month of the Jewish calendar year. We therefore have about 7 weeks to go before Rosh Hashanah. Hard to believe, but there it is. And yet, before Rosh Hashanah, there is the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av commemorating the destruction of both the first temple and the second temple and numerous other tragedies that befell us over the course of history. Tisha B'Av begins this Saturday evening. Our Sedra this week is Devarim, Deuteronomy 1:1, and following the very beginning of the fifth book of the Torah, Deuteronomy. But there are strange and interesting and even troubling links between the Sedra that we're going to be reading Saturday morning, the Haftarah, which is traditionally read on the Shabbat morning preceding Tisha B'Av, and the Book of Lamentations, Eicha, which is going to be read Saturday evening throughout the world. And I have to say, read no more significantly than before the tens of thousands of people who will gather throughout the night on the public plaza in front of the Western Wall, Kotel HaMaravi in Yerushalayim. The Western Wall has never been an object of religious devotion, veneration for me, except on Tisha B'Av. If those stones could speak, oh, what stories they would tell us. The opening chapters of the book of Deuteronomy sing praises of God's love for the Jewish people. Good stuff. True, we often fail to deserve that love. True, at times we act foolishly, we rebel, we're stubborn and thoughtless. But God loves us. God will carry us into history as a father carries his beloved child on his shoulder. And later on, we have another metaphor in Deuteronomy that God will carry us on eagle's wings, shielding us, protecting us. Let us taste what it feels like to soar toward the heavens. Excuse me. The Torah reading being concluded with such powerful assurances of God's love, we turn immediately to the Haftarah, that unique selection from the prophets that is always read on the Shabbat morning immediately prior to the beginning of Tisha B'Av. And what is that Haftarah? Isaiah 1:1 and following. The Hebrew text of the Haftarah begins, Chazon Yeshayahu ben Amoz asher chaza al Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. This is the vision, the Chazon of Isaiah son of Amoz that he beheld concerning Judah and Jerusalem. This Shabbat is therefore called Shabbat Chazon, the Sabbath of the vision of Isaiah, because of that opening sentence. And what is Isaiah's vision? And why is Isaiah chapter 1 mandated to be read immediately prior to Tisha B'Av? Listen as God speaks. My people is a sinful people. My people fails to acknowledge my presence in their lives. So your land is desolate. Your cities are burned down. And even more terror is coming. I want nothing more to do with your sacrifices. Get out of my temple, because your presence there is meaningless to me. I hate your festivals. And then in verse 21, the strong link to Tisha B'Av itself. Eicha hayta lezona. Eicha, the very first word of the Book of Lamentations that will be read Saturday evening. Eicha is found in the Haftarah section. Eicha, how is it that you have been acting like whores, like prostitutes? I, God, am going to purify you with suffering before you can ever again stand before me. Zion must be redeemed through righteousness. Staggering away from such devastating threats, wondering whatever happened to that God who promised to carry us into the future on God's own shoulders or on eagle's wings. Hours later, we will gather in darkened rooms. The Arona Kodesh, in fact, will be shrouded in black. We will sit as mourners on the floor. The only light used to be only from candles, but nowadays cell phones there too. Sharing in that magnificent, haunting, frightening chant of the Book of Lamentations. Eicha yashva vadad ha'ir rabati am. How is it that lonely sits the city, once great with people? Bitterly she weeps in the night. Zion's roads are in mourning. Her enemies are now the masters. My eyes flow with tears. God has laid waste the city. The eternal acts like a foe. So in less than 24 hours, we move from the embrace of God's eternal love to dire warnings of impending doom, and then to a recitation of unspeakable horrors. I have never been on a roller coaster, ever. My stomach tells me that riding such an instrument of joy would be very disabling, both physically and emotionally. But ride the roller coaster we all will from Saturday morning to Saturday night. And that ride will be very disabling, intellectually and spiritually. Rabbi Shai Held cast some light on the issues. It all began with Adam and Eve, but as you know, things didn't work out. So then we shift to Noah. Things didn't work out. So God focuses divine hope and love and expectations upon Abraham and Sarah and all of their descendants. In other words, upon us. We're a tiny people. God is beyond infinite, and yet here we are, in a relationship, in a covenant, so very unequal in every possible way. There was nothing intrinsically better about us. So we created all sorts of delightful midrashim to explain how this relationship came about. Those midrashim are really apologetics. Sort of like mumbling, I'm sorry, to a world that will not understand us and the closeness that we feel to God. The authors of the Torah scatter reminders throughout the text. Don't be confused. This relationship with God is not due to how great you are, because you are not great. None of your achievements will ever belong to you. Just as you are mine, capital M, mine, those achievements are mine. Don't allow yourselves to be confused, because such confusion will cost you. The prophet Amos later on says it best, you only have I selected from among all the peoples, so therefore I will visit all of your iniquities upon you. Whatever the basis is for that special relationship between God and the Jewish people, that relationship places enormous burdens upon us. Secret, God dislikes failure. We may not believe in a God who chooses, a God who favors, a God who rewards and punishes. We certainly may reject the notion that the nightmares surrounding Tisha B'Av are expressions of divine disfavor regarding our shortcomings. But that doesn't deny the reality that we Jews have always viewed ourselves as understanding our world differently. We see the world differently. We embrace free will, all the while acknowledging that the choices we make might be ignored or even rejected by others in our world. We believe that our world is an expression of divine love, even though we cannot explain nor even describe that love. We believe that human actions carry consequences, even though those consequences will never be fair nor equitable. We believe that the God of history, or history, capital H, itself, has laid a burden upon us as a people. If we reject that burden, we reject history. If we reject that burden, we deny our sacred texts. If we reject that burden, then we have no chance to help the light of Torah illuminate our world. We live with God's inexplicable love. We live with equally inexplicable, horrific pain and suffering. And yet we will not deny who we are and the tasks that someone, capital S, someone, some force, some intuition has placed upon us. For me, that's what being Jewish is all about. So have a meaningful Shabbat, my friends. Feel the love, tremble before the warnings, weep over the suffering, and then, even then, embrace our eternal covenant. Please hit share, have an easy fast, and begin to prepare your hearts and souls for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Shabbat Shalom.